What's up? Today is Tuesday, June 10th. That's a lie. It's Monday, June 10th. And I am starting this vlog in my work polo. So sorry, this is like a new thing that you're just going to see a lot. It's going to be my book diary for Dreams of Gods and Monsters by Laini. We are almost done with the book diary series for this series, but I'm so excited about this book. I am already 180 pages in, so in the next clip I'll go through the annotations that I've made so far, but I just wanted to give a quick little hello, welcome to the book diary vlog thing. And yeah, I am having a great time reading this story. I love this series so much. If you didn't know, I'm doing a read along with Catriona from Little Book Owl and Red from Little Red Reader. We did the first live show on Kaz's channel and the second live show on Red's channel. The live show for Dreams of Gods and Monsters has already passed on my channel as well, so I will link that up above. The video is going to be full of spoilers, so you've been warned. If you haven't read the entire series, now is not the time to watch this video unless you don't care about spoilers. But I would recommend going and reading these books before you watch this video, because man, it is good. There's a lot of twists and turns and fun things that happen, so I highly recommend this series in general. But yeah, so if you haven't watched them yet and you don't want to be spoiled, now is the time to go. I'm sorry.
People. It's actually like weeks after I filmed that intro, but I'm currently a mess of a post-yoga face, so I'm not going to show you my face. The first one was this one, Pretend She Was Normal, and this is about Eliza, which is our new character, who makes her entrance at the start of this book. He's a scientist. This is some like character building here. It will not happen to me. I'm stronger than others, and we're just kind of like thrown into this scene and her perspective, and we don't really know what she's talking about yet. Page 20, we get some romance. Karou and Akiva, stone-faced and 10 feet apart. The impression of a pair of magnets pretending not to be magnets. It only works until it doesn't. Then on the next page, all her turmoil had to stay hidden, and there was plenty of it to hide. That was Karou. Ziri had to be the wolf, the manner and cadence and chill, suppressed brutality. Paradoxically, a better him. One who could guide the people toward survival instead of dead-end vengeance. Put a little heart next to thinking about it was Ziri's life and everything depended on it. This fact that he's betraying everyone and like pretending to be the wolf. It was acid in the pit of her belly to see Akiva's eyes darken. By his side, Laraz was worse. Laraz was contemptuous. And this is in response to seeing Karou and the wolf, who's really Ziri, have this little like camaraderie moment, and Akiva and Laraz saw it. Then on page 40, we have she'd had to learn over the edge of that soupy crawling darkness, lean over the edge, with Ziri's gleaning staff to gather the souls of Amzalag and the shadows that live, murdered by the wolf and his cronies for the crime of taking her side. She's talking about the pit back at the Kasbah. Then this is 2 or 3 soldiers had wordlessly taken up some of his gear so that he could manage Mick. And then it was clear that the friends, Zuzana and Mick, had won real affection from this group in a way she herself had not. Put a little heart talking about when Liseth asks, "Are you threatening me?" "Threatening you? Now how did you get that out of what I just said? I was talking about making enemies, and I can't imagine any revenant soldier being dumb enough to make an enemy of the resurrectionist." I just love that she's like starting to, fight back a little bit. This is talking about switching from the two worlds. You had to dive through the hole on faith. Larger creatures did best to fold back their wings and hit it with speed, and if you went a fraction too high or too low, and they'd feel no resistance and overshoot it. So then we get some of this. The girl took a bite, and in that instant, Meliel would have sworn that her teeth were points. It was like a veil yanked askew, and behind it, Edelon of the dancing eyes were savage. Her delicacy was gone. She was nasty. The fruit burst, and she tipped back her head, sucking and licking to catch the thick juice in her mouth. The soldiers recoiled from her. And so I wrote, is this Stellian magic? Because it's just kind of confusing here. And then we get the soldiers and children do as they're told. Children grow out of it, but soldiers just die. So then on page 70, we have an alien landing would unify the world just like in science fiction movies, but angels had the potential to splinter humanity into 1,000 sharp shards. These are just some really good quotes, I think. I said fuck Jael and Razged because this whole thing is when they're starting their like, pretend to be gods thing. Her first orphaning, her second was much more recent and his fault. This is Karu thinking about Akiva. And this is also when she's seeing where she was orphaned the first time. Then on page 91, I highlighted, don't forget, not ever, not for a second. This is Karu telling Ziri not to forget who he is, really, even though he's pretending to be the wolf. So then on page 100, we have, can you imagine how much easier it would all be if he were here? Akiva and Laraz are talking about if Hazael was here. The awful truth is that it wasn't just her hands that were marked. Talking about Laraz. The last 2 kills, she'd had the stomach to record before Laura Mendy. So it wasn't just her hands that were marked, it goes all the way up to her elbows. We're in Eliza's perspective, and she has this dream of the beasts are coming for you. And I wrote, why does she have the dream? What's the connection between her and everyone else that we've met so far? And then we have on page 111, that was where a swordsman rested his hand. But to illustrate their promise, the misbegotten, all 296 of them, refrained from it, lest the pose seem threatening. This is when the Chimera and the misbegotten are meeting each other at the Kirin Caves. Ah! On page 127, we have Scarab, the Stellian Queen. On with the hunt, she says. For Akiva, we know, but why is the question that we still don't have an answer to. Then I don't highlight anything until page 160, which I think might have accidentally happened because I was also listening to this book on audiobook. But it says, what if he could work a counterspell to protect the misbegotten from the marks, from the Hansas? Real quick before I go into this, the stuff that happened in between this is all the crazy stuff that happens between the misbegotten and the Chimera. When they meet, somebody betrayed the misbegotten in the Chimera host and put their Hamsa out, which then caused all this like friction, and it was basically like, oh no, this is all gonna go down. But then Akiva like pulsed this magic out to make everybody stop for a moment and feel this like crazy despair. Nobody really has realized that it was him except for Karu. So then Karu had drawn 2 monstrous men facing each other across the table, and in front of each of them was an enormous bowl of people. She's talking about a past art assignment, and she's basically saying that the war creates this problem of like, we continue to serve more people into this war, and then the other opposite sides of this just continue eating the people. It doesn't ever really fix anything is kind of the point of that story. 179, we have bitterness. Here was a refill for the bowls, more meat for the grinding teeth of war. So there's the end of that story. So then on page 181, absent that, Mick suggested, how about music? Karu smiled. I think that's a great idea. Gradually, she thought the music began to have an effect on them. Something softened in the atmosphere. This is like during the tense aftermath of everything that went down when the misbegotten and Chimera met the first time. We all felt it. The end, simple and eerie. He's talking about the despair that pulsed through. A burst of magic. This is when Karu finally realizes that it was Akiva. He was the one who saved us. And this is the Dashnag boy from the last book. He sees Akiva and he tells them about what happened. They pretended not to see us. They just let us go. And Balieros is like, they probably just didn't see you. And he's like, no, they did. So Beastbane, crusading for beasts, he gave a speculative look across the cavern. And on page 191, Ziri's sense of smell in this body was far better than his natural one had been. And this is when he finds out that there was some sort of betrayal. A group of Chimera thought that he sent a private order to like hurt one of the misbegotten, and he did not. And so he's finding out who it was. So then this is skipping to Karu's point of view. It was only Akiva, and he was in a open door waiting for her. But then we switch back to Ziri, and it was 10, which is really Hexaya, who betrayed everyone. And this gets pretty dicey because Hexaya actually knows that Ziri is not the White Wolf. So then he's like worried at the same time as all of this is going on that like if he decides to like punish her, then she could potentially tell it. So Laraz figures out, like, don't tell me I killed you once, or was it more than once? And she says once was enough. Laraz ends up killing 2 of the Chimera who are with 10, and she says, she thinks, why did you make me do this? And then they make her lift up her sleeves, her inked flesh, her terrible hidden tally. And Hexaya explains to Ten why she's doing this with one word, Savath. And we don't ever really get details of what's happened. We just know that during this time, Zael, like, heavy in his hand, brought the tattoo stuff over to Loraz and didn't let her ink the kills. It was my natural flesh that you desecrated, says Ten, and this, of course, is just a vessel. How could you know who we are by looking? You don't stand a chance, because she doesn't look like her old self. Ten asks, which one, pretty angel, which mark is mine? And she says, none of them, and then this is the explanation. Shame never faded, and Loraz realized only now that this was the baseline of her emotions in regards to this situation. Back to Karoo, and she says, he kept thinking, or no, this is Akiva, he kept thinking of her as though she were magical in a different body, but she was more than that. She'd lived another life since he knew her, and he couldn't know, but he could learn what had changed. And this is just like cute romance, but then at the same time, he's all sad. She says, Akiva, I never thanked you for bringing me Issa's soul. And he's all upset because the idea of her apologizing to him. And that he says, there was nothing you said that I didn't deserve, and worse. And then finally, she tells Akiva that the white wolf is dead. She killed him. And she explains, like, that it's Ziri, which is the Kieran that he saved earlier. It's all I want, to be beside you, helping you. If it takes forever, all the better. If it's forever with you. It was her heart, this smile, and it was for him. And then, of course, all of this is happening at the same time that Loraz is almost dying. So, of all the soldiers under his command, his fellow trespasser, his co-conspirator, this was everything put at risk. The alliance, of course, but the deception too, because it was Ten. Ziri thinking about Loraz. To his surprise, she had asked after him, himself, Ziri, in such a way that it made clear she had noticed his absence. Coming back to, like, the present, Ten still held her wrists, a direct order ignored when he tells her to let go of Loraz, and he asks if she would explain herself, and then Ten says, would you care to explain yourself? And they're all stunned by her insubordination. So, of course, as the White Wolf, he can't do much. He can just snap her neck, so that's what he does. And he says, no, I would not care to explain myself. His look dared them to be the next to demand it. So then, of course, they're like, we thought this was your order. And he's like, yeah, you guys are idiots. You think I would risk every plan I've put in place, and for what? For one angel? You think I'm stupid enough to cast everything away rather than wait a few hours to engage the 1,000 angels who are the true and immediate threat? Is this supposed to make me feel better? And of course, they're all like, well, shit. So he says to Liseth, who is the one that warned him, you're spared the sentence of your comrades, but we both know it was only circumstance that saved you, not wisdom. So as he's bringing Loraz through the caves, because she's all hurt, so he's like carrying her, he notices a spice note was bright, and like a burst of heat, it seared a path for something much more subtle and unexpected. The most secret of perfumes, natural, he had no doubt. And he thinks about the fact that if he was in his Kieran body, he wouldn't be able to smell it. And it wasn't too sweet, but just enough. And I just love it. They're so cute. So by the time Loraz finally moved, once he puts her in the healing waters in the Kieran caves, Ziri could make out not just the chalk green cast of water and the pink of the hanging veils of moss, but the dark gold of her lashes as they fluttered and slowly opened and fixed on him. And he says again, we haven't been introduced, not really, because that was the same thing they said when they first were introduced as the White Wolf, and she didn't know yet. There could be life around the edges, Akiva every day in work, and in pain, yes, but in love too. Cake has as a way of life. So then we move on. On the back of his neck was a mark that Karoo knew had not been there before, an eye, a closed eye, but it was a scar. He had effectively negated the Chimera's most powerful weapon, the Hamsas. So then we come back to Loraz. Well, at least you still have your clothes on when her and Ziri come back in order to tell everyone what has just happened. So he gives the corpse of Ten he shows it to Karoo and Akiva and says the oath breaker. Loraz says this was personal and it was because of Savath. We still don't know what happened of Savath. We just know it was before Karoo's time. It was a village on the western shores of the Bay of Beasts, it had been, but obviously it was destroyed.
Right. I've now put clothes on that are appropriate, and like I have my makeup on, so I'm going to be able to look at you again. So we stopped at page 243 and we get into the perspective of Eliza again, and she has been chosen by like her boss, her science boss, to go to the Casbah because the people there in Morocco found the pit of all of the dead chimera, and so the world is once again going nuts. Well, the people who know about it, because we know there are angels, and then now there are these like evil looking animal things. And so the first two bodies that she notices are the sphinxes, and she goes, they look like sphinxes from mythology. The guy who like found the bodies is like, well, I was hoping to dismiss this whole thing as a hoax and I haven't been able to, so I'm hoping now that the two of you are here that like you'll be able to dismiss this as
on
a
page
hoax.
244 we get Eliza saying that she leaned over one dark wing and she notices that it's owl. See the fimbre? These flutings are unique to owl plumage. It is what makes them silent in flight. So we're getting a little bit more information about how the shadows that live are so quiet. Of course, they're not owls, at least not entirely. She knew that the creatures were real as she knew that the angels were real, because people, they're like looking for surgical seams and stuff like that, but Eliza knows. And this is once again another little comment that like we are not understanding yet, because how is she aware of these monsters? It was feeling it inside herself, the truth and the depth of it buried within her, the monsters in a pit, the knowing could rip her apart, her sanity anyway. The gift was a curse. She'd worked very hard to stifle her gift and to be who she wanted to be, and she had succeeded so far. Ziri's body, this one was buried alone in a shallow grave, and Eliza thinks he looked like art. There is another universe, and that's where they've gone. Eliza just thinks that. Like, again, we're getting these weird snippets of the fact that she knows things. But there was a crack in the shell of Razgut's mind. He had been beautiful once, oh yes, but now only his eyes told that tale. The almond shape of them stood out as fine in his swollen, bruise-colored face. Razgut remembered what no one else did. The cataclysm. We haven't gotten information about that yet. But this whole scene is just like Razgut playing around with Jael, and it's actually really funny, but it's also just really horrible because they're both bad people. There was a slyness to his expression now. This was Morgan, who's like the arch enemy of Eliza, because he is a horrible person. So he had this malicious eagerness.
We find out that Morgan Toth he got into Eliza's phone and found out that she is the girl who years ago had been assumed dead by this cult, and that she was supposed to be a prophet. So he makes up this letter to the press with the photos that she has made in the Casbah of these demons, and basically just like, she had signed a non-disclosure agreement, so now it looks like she sent them all out and she thinks she's the prophet.
We flip back to Akiva's perspective, and we're on page 264. There was an uneasy intermingling of seraphim and chimera, which was nothing short of a miracle, and it was their miracle, his and Karu's. Akiva was at least free now to dream, because Karu forgave him and she loved him. The presence, and there was a presence, registered as unfamiliar, even hostile. There was a newfound awareness of his own life as a discrete entity, and a chill gripped him. He thinks that he's feeling Karu come to him invisible, but then he realizes, I don't think that's her. Then we are back with Eliza and her boss, and he says, my wife likes to say that the mind is a palace with room for many guests, the delegates of science in a different wing from the emissaries of faith, lest they take up arguing in the passages. He's basically talking about how he believes in both science and God. This is Eliza. There wasn't another universe. There were many beyond many, unknowably. I've seen them, thought Eliza. New Eliza. I've seen other universes. I've been to them and I destroyed them. And we still don't know what's going on. So then Sirathar had drawn her to him like a mask. Scarab, queen of the stelliums, found the magus she had come to kill, and this is Akiva. It made the shape of a closed eye, and though she felt the power in the mark, she was unfamiliar with the design. She's looking at the one that protects him from the Hamsas. None of them pulse raw power like the seraph before her now, which is Akiva. Magi didn't use steel. They didn't need it. When a magus killed, no blood flowed. So when she killed him, he would simply stop living. But she's looking at Akiva, who is clearly a warrior. First age of her people, they had lived ever at war. Mystical Uriah a harp strung with the life threads of slain foes. She had touched his life and knew that he was before she even saw his face, and then she did see his face, and so did Konarsiel. And though he did not gasp, Scarab felt the ripples of shock as they merged from their own, because they realized that Akiva is Festival's son, who is Nightingale's grandson. And that's important. He put up no shield against the anima, but only stood there strong and fierce, as though that made a difference. He's trying to protect Karoo from this invisible force that he's feeling. Unless you'd like to explain to Nightingale that we found a scion of the line of Festival and severed his thread. Saying that we're not going to kill Akiva anymore, because now we know who he is. Sphinxes were alive again. She brings them back to life. We can't kill everyone. This is talking about all of the angels in Jael's army. And Loraz says, so we spare them. She was expecting sarcasm, but to her surprise, none was forthcoming. 3 fingers, Loraz said. Take the 3 middle fingers, and then they won't be useful in battle. 305. The effect of the Hamsas was instantaneous. Akiva reaches for Siratha, but he is thrown to his knees as though clapped by thunder. This is during the war. So the Hamsas do help, but then it's still a little bit too much. He tries to reach for Sirathar again, and again the thunder invades his head and drives him to his knees. And I think it was the other Magi who had come, Scarab. So they interweave, Zuzana sees, and the elegance of it, the symmetry, almost overwhelms her with the perfection while she's watching this battle. A second sky of fire is falling. Today, Natid is the goddess of nothing but tears, because there is another set of Jael's army coming for them now. It's Loraz's gaze that Ziri holds as they vanish. Wah! Her features are soft with sorrow, and her beauty takes his breath away. Trust. Because they trust each other now. She only ever saw him at a great distance and doesn't even know what his true face looked like. She wishes she did as she watches the whole thing. Loraz says to Akiva the same thing that Hazael said in the last book. The urn is full, my brother. And then she pushes him through the rip in the universes back to Earth with Karoo instead of going herself like she was supposed to. And then she closes it, and so they can't get back through, and they're fighting in another sky, and there was nothing to be done about it. And Karoo and Akiva are just like emotional, standing on the other, or flying on the other side on Earth's air, like wishing they could go back to help everyone, even though they know it wouldn't make a difference because this war was not going to go well. Eliza and the doctor who is in charge of who found the Chimera in the Casbah says, it's all very nice for Christians, yes? Angels in Rome, demons here. How neat, how tidy for the Western worldview, and how wrong. Zuzana's perspective. She's talking about Ziri, and he really deserves a happy ending. In a fairy tale, Zuzana had argued he would get one for sure. At the same moment that the image of Ziri's discarded Kirin body made its debut on the human airwaves, a Dominion blade pierced him through the heart. At this point, we also already know that Ziri, being the White Wolf, was supposed to have made a safety from the Chimera to then come back and take the souls out, but he didn't have time because of everything and how it went down. So there is nobody sitting and waiting and ready to get the souls out. So in this moment, we think that like this is the end. There's nobody who's going to come for them to save them. And so then we switch back to Eliza after the situation with the fake letter and all of the photos being leaked from Morgan Toth. And her boss is like not believing that she didn't do it. Did you deny that they are your photographs? I took them, but that doesn't mean that and they were sent from your email, so it was hacked. Basically, they think she's crazy. And then she said last night, I don't believe in God. And there's a shift in his eyes, a suspicion. Eliza might be forced to do many things, many and more that she did not want to do. But Eliza, she was outside playing. She's thinking back on her life and how Eliza was the one that she would think of as a little girl. I wrote abuse. She's talking about her past again, like the constant touching of everyone and all of this like stuff that she had to deal with in the cult. Then somebody says there's a conflict of interest because of her past, and she says there is no conflict, I'm a scientist. And the guy who found everything, the Moroccan doctor, says, and an angel. She says, who sneers? Wondered Eliza fadingly. She thought it was something only book characters did, and that made me laugh. I left all that behind. It must have been very difficult for you. And it wasn't that it was the wrong thing to say, but the stilted delicacy, the patronizing indulgent, difficult, she returned, and the Big Bang Theory was just an explosion. She said that to him last night in jest. She'd smiled
ironically, and he chuckled. Hard-earned anonymity had been snatched from her. Her professional credibility from this moment forward will be entangled with the history that she fought so hard to hide. He was acting like she was hysterical, and for a second, it made her doubt herself. And this scene is so wild.
Obviously, like, this is some bizarre, like, fantasy version of reality where there are monsters and demons and angels and all of that stuff. And, like, a crazy cult, too. But, like, this conversation happens all the time between men and women where the men decide to make it sound like you're being irrational. And then all of the women think, well, maybe I am being irrational. But in reality, like, looking on the outside, the conversation probably isn't irrational at all. It just is different than what the man wants to have. And, like, I hate everything about it. So, again, he tries to interject, and again, Eliza silenced him. I expected more from you. You got God strolling in the hallways of your mind palace. You know that they're real. But the idea that I could be descended from one, now that's crazy. And yes, I do still have visions, and I hate them. It's my goddamn genetic destiny. And we go to Susanna. I'm changing my wishes anyway. 1, for our friend Safe. 2, for Jael to drop dead. And 3, whatever she meant to say, she didn't manage it. And we get this scene where Susanna, Carew, and Mick are in the hotel now, and Susanna at first doesn't think that they have chocolate, but Mick shows her that she was missing a page and she gets all excited. And so when they call to order, the waiter or whatever says they'd run out. But this was when Susanna felt the nature of the change within herself for a certainty, because it wasn't a big deal. Her lines of context had been redrawn, and that one for big deal had been scooted way the hell back. Well, that's a bummer, but I guess I'll survive. This makes me sad. So Susanna had never met the fake grandmother, but she felt no warmth for her. The Christmas cards were about as personal as the ones from the bank, and she wanted to neck punch anyone who disappointed Carew. So then Susanna has to get Carew, Akiva, and Amzalog, I believe it is, or Beliaris maybe, into the bathroom to hide when the waiter comes with all the food. And so she purposely stuffs Akiva and Carew into the bathtub so that they're stuck together, because she just wants them to get over themselves. And, like, page 377, Akiva's heart beat against her temple, Carew's, and his arms came around to hold her. He was warm as summer, and she felt the sigh that moved through him. Eliza shows up. She's, like, gone into a catatonic state, and she keeps talking in Seraphic, and we're like, what? And Akiva and Carew accidentally run into her, basically. And so this is more of, like, monologue of what she's saying in Seraphic. Susanna is a rabbit fairy cutting to the chase, and she's like, why are we just sitting here with her? Like, get her inside. So she brings him in. Carew and Akiva leave to do what they're supposed to do, and we get a Jael perspective where he says, who is she to make demands? And we don't realize until later that who he was talking to was the fake grandmother. We go back to the scene with Susanna and the fake grandmother and Mick. Carew and Akiva are actually still there in this moment, and we realize that back when Carew had come to her fake grandmother and asking for wishes so that she could get back to Aretz, fake grandmother had said, sorry, I don't have any, but she had held out on her because she was a little asshole, and she was like, but it's all okay now because I will get more wishes because Brimstone is alive. But no, he's not, and she has to tell her that. And she lies again and says she now really doesn't have any more wishes, and that's still a lie. So then, Carew and Akiva leave to do what they're supposed to do, and Mick and Susanna are still with the fake grandmother, and she basically kicks them out of the hotel room, and then Mick begs her to go back for his violin case so that, like, we don't have anything, and the least I could do is make some money on the street. And so she allows it, and he finds all of her wishes that she was hiding and takes them instead of the violin in the violin case and runs away with it. And, like, Mick is a badass. So then we switch to the scene where Carew and Akiva are sneaking in to get Jael, whatever they're planning on doing to him. We don't really know what the plan is. We realize that it's not Jael sleeping, but it is Razgut in his bed feigning sleep, and he turns over, and all of the host of Jael's, like, security comes in. And it's far more than he would normally have, because he knew what was going to happen. But then, in that same scene, all of the host has come inside of the room, and Jael is standing, like, in the doorway, and what they don't know is that they resurrected Hexiah because she happened to have her, the only soul she had on her. And so she resurrects Hexiah and has her sneak in behind everyone. And so then Hexiah has Jael by the throat.
and that is how they get him to agree. During this scene, Akiva also does that thing that he did to the doors. He burns a palm onto Jael's chest and says that I will make this light up if you do not leave Earth with all of your hosts and you don't bring weapons in. He says, I don't promise to not kill you, I just promise not to burn you. That's how they get Jael to leave Earth without weapons. In this scene also, Razgut takes a knife that he had hidden and he throws it straight at Akiva's heart, and it hits Akiva's heart but goes through him and hits the door instead, because there is magic afoot, and we don't really understand how it happened, but everything is fine. Razgut starts throwing a temper tantrum. It's weird. So now on to page 466, we're getting some more information about who Eliza and Razgut both are. So the universes lie upon the next as the pages of a book. Every page is infinite and the book has no end. Elazael and Razgut were the same six, with Ioth and Devera, Cleos and Arieth, and their direction was set to Maliz. Maliz first and last, Maliz eternal. The pharaohs came home and the beasts came behind them and devoured it. And so what we find out is that Maliz and Eretz are right next to each other, just like Eretz and Earth are right next to each other. So Eretz sits in the middle. And all of the seraphim and all of the stellians are both from Maliz. And so when Razgut and Elazael and the two others come back from these devouring monsters, they bring them to Maliz. And they haven't been able to stop anything because it's the stellians that are able to fix it. So everybody of the seraphim and the stellians that are able to get through the portal into Eretz before the monsters come, get through. And then the stellians are the ones who are able to solder the hole between Maliz and Eretz and keep it stayed. And so we find out that basically the stellians have been maintaining this safety net for the last millennia, however long it's been since the monsters destroyed. Find out that evil grandmother traded Karoo information for mining rights to an entire undeveloped world with a slave population already in place, meaning Eretz. Are you fucking kidding me? That's why. She didn't sense the presence until she was practically on top of it, but by then it was too late. The arms tightened and flushed from shadow to flesh so that Esther Van de Vlad saw for the first time the thing that was going to be her companion for the end of the days. You'll never be lonely again, says Razgut. So then Eliza starts talking about the monarch butterfly and how the monarch butterflies that start their big migration are not the same ones who come back at the end of the migration, and so she feels like she has always known that she is like them. And so she has the maps and the memories, so she is able to get them back to Eretz. We come back to Karoo's perspective, and Karoo gets back to Eretz. And as she walks up, she realizes that she sees the White Wolf's flag that he always runs, but the White Wolf's flag is all messed up, and the White Wolf's body is hanging next to it. And so it's very clear that Jael's host has won. At the same time, we're getting the perspective of Jael being welcomed back into this camp. And he immediately, this nasty ass man, is like, I need a woman, because he's been waiting, because he's trying to keep up the facade of being an angel and not this monster that he really is. So he asks for a woman, and they're like, oh yeah, a woman's already waiting for you in your chambers, except that woman is Laraz, because it's a secret. It wasn't your victory, it was ours. And so the Chimera host did win, and they put the White Wolf's body up in order to trick him to get in. Then we get the perspective of Karoo and Laraz, and Laraz says it wasn't disrespect. Oh my god, I'm gonna cry. Karoo asks Laraz to burn the White Wolf's body, and then she grabs the little piece of horn that's left over from Ziri's body before they do. They watch it burn, and then I'm gonna cry already. Wow, I love this scene so much it hurts. Laraz says that she didn't see him die. After the whole thing happens, I found his body finally. It had fallen into a ravine, into the stream. She asks, moving water, does it hasten evanescence? Clearly, Karoo remembered the devastation on Laraz's face when she had to tell her as gently as she could, under the circumstances, that Hazael's soul was lost, and she's concerned that Laraz didn't learn that moving the body doesn't mean she's taking the soul with her. But then Laraz says, I don't know. It's not a thurible, it's her canteen, but it closes. I didn't have incense, and I couldn't find anyone nearby, and I thought it would be worse to wait, but then I couldn't tell if anything happened, and I couldn't feel anything or see anything, and so I'm afraid it was already gone. And I sang, If That Matters, and Karoo felt her heart pulled to pieces.
And then Karoo thinks if Ziri's soul was in that canteen, Karoo would happily learn whatever song Laraz had sung and make it part of her resurrection ritual forever, just so that the angel would never feel that she'd been foolish, because the singing wouldn't have mattered. But, like, if she saved Ziri, wow, I'm like, emotional! She opens the canteen and she feels home, and Ziri is in there, and Ziri's soul is in there, and I'm just sobbing.
So because of everything that happened, the wolf is believed to have been lost in this battle, so the deception might be swept under the carpet of history, and Karoo's wondering, does that rob Ziri of the glory due him for his very great role in their victory? Maybe, but Karoo thought it would sit just fine with him. So Laraz had her own sharp hope. She had the horn pressed deep in her pocket. Outside the palisade, it hadn't seemed in any way necessary to actually bring Ziri back. It was all tears and laughing, but now she's just like waiting and hoping. She thinks back to Hazael, who once said, anyone who takes on my sister, all puffed up bravado, will have to deal with my sister. And then he dived behind her and cowered. And I miss Hazael.
We find out that yet again in this battle that we didn't really get to watch, there was yet another like magical pulse that happened, and we find out that it was Scarab who turned the tide and had the Chimera win.
Once again, we're days later. We're finishing this vlog today.
76. My first one here is Karoo flew straight into Issa's arms and stayed there long enough that a nest of serpents wound round her too, pallid and glimmering, and joining them together. And then I put a little heart here because we talk about Christmas at Zuzana's household, and it's just cute. There was laughter in the set of his mouth because it had become funny at last at the tail end of waiting. That was Akiva. They were violin strings, the pair of them, ready to sing. Oh, cute. Laraz, the look of agonized suspense on her face, and then Karoo thinks, Jesus, what was wrong with her? She blinked. Ziri's soul was hanging from her belt, and she was about to have sex. She couldn't help herself. This is Laraz thinking of Ziri. When she sees him for the first time, she felt a surge of misgiving, almost revulsion. And then he says, we haven't been introduced. Laraz's heart gave a slam. That voice, though, it was as sonorous as the Kirin wind flutes, effortlessly rich and smooth, and I love it. How could she tell him that he was magnificent? And she was humbled, speechless, not with distaste, but with awe. I like it. I mean. And then she put her hand right back over her mouth and reddened. It kept going, his smile, from amused to purely pleased, so to deeply relieved. It was so lovely that she felt it in her heart. One of the worst things about being the wolf was not being able to fly. I'm going to now. He was awkward, his voice halting. Ziri cleared his throat and looked at her so earnest, so hopeful. Do you want to come? That was something she could do. She just had to nod.
I love them so much.
Karoo had left off the Hamsas in part because the true Ziri hadn't had them, and in part because she wanted them to become obsolete. Foreboding was working its knuckles into her shoulders. It was just flying, and an angel was flying alongside it. They watched the storm hunter come, and it was very near before Ziri realized that the figure flying along it was not its only company. There were figures riding it. Some strange human language, pure delirious joy. Mick and Zuzana had tamed the storm hunter. They were going to be legends. I freaking love it. Energies vied, but not his own. This is Akiva, and we don't know what's going on here. This is basically the conversation that happens between the Stellians. It's a lazy wish. That's its appeal. Learning stuff is hard, says Mick, because he's trying to use the things to learn the languages. This is the scene where Eliza gives Morgan Toth a Hitler mustache, and then they do the same thing to the evil grandmother. Apparently the storm hunters like music. Pain is one way, the easiest and crudest, in order to make magic, is what we find out, but we don't really find out what the other way is. Sterathar is the energy itself, the raw substance of the veils. It protects and it nourishes, and you gave nothing, only took. It shouldn't be possible, and this is a very grave thing. So they're kind of starting to explain what Akiva's been doing when he's been so powerful, and he's the only one who's basically ever been able to do it. He had nearly torn the whole veil wide open so those monsters could get in, basically. They remembered the way their enemies had fallen limp in battle and plummeted from the sky. This is during the war that we did not witness. One woman
This is where we find out that it wasn't the Stellians that saved the Chimera host from Jael's army. It was just one Stellian. They're so powerful.
So this is where we get that the God Stars don't exist yet, says Eliza. People with destiny shouldn't make plans Eliza would say later, laughing, but right now what she said was, there were never God stars yet. They felt in that instant a dark age quietly giving way and a bright one bloom into being. And this is the end of the war's age. Time is an ocean, not a river. It simply is internal.
This is where
and
we're
entire.
getting more information about how, like, Eliza basically knows past, present, and future because time is. It's not a timeline like how we think of it, which is really interesting. That's a really, like, different cultural way of looking at it. There are lots of cultures that view time in a circle rather than in a line, and I really liked that she did not use the Western way. It's kind of hard to understand, but at the same time, it's really cool. Eliza was a prophet, and she was a farer too. That's what they called the certain angels that had gone.
Time passes. We're now on page 597. By no feasible interpretation were they going to become gods. They would play a part in the realization of myth.
This freaking cute scene where Eliza, Issa, and Zuzana come and they help Karu get ready because she's been doing all of this crazy stuff, getting all of those chimera that were in the big church type thing. She's been doing all of this work. So they come, they bring her to where Akiva is, and they, like, help her get ready, and they, like, bathe her, and it's just this, like, badass woman taking care of woman thing. Issa says, it is your duty, sweet girl, to be well in body and soul. And so they wash Karu, and it's just so freaking cute. And then, of course, they produce instead a whisper of midnight dark silk, a glimmer with clusters of tiny crystals, like constellations, and Karu laughed, because it looks so much like the dress that she wore the night that she re-met Akiva as magical. And it says, Karu almost wished for a bowl of sugar and a puff with which to dust herself. The last line of the entire book is they hooked their fingers around its slender spools, talking about a wishbone, and pulled. And I just put a little heart next to that. And that's the end of the book, and that's the end of the series. And oh my god, I'm obsessed with this book. I'm obsessed with these people that don't exist. I'm obsessed with Laini Taylor's writing. That's everything for this video. It's been a long time coming. This video has been a mess because I'm a mess. Night of Cake and Puppets is coming as a book for July. Technically we're reading it in June, and then the live show will be the second weekend of July. I believe it'll be on the 12th at 7 p.m. PST unless something changes. And it'll be on Catriona's channel. I'm also doing book diaries for the entire Throne of Glass series. My next one that'll be out will be for Crown of Midnight. I haven't started that book yet, so it won't be out anytime in the near future. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. I'm trying to make videos every Thursday and Saturday. I've been kind of like hit or miss on videos lately because I got that new job. I've been sick. It's been a mess. So I'm trying to get back into the swing of things and such, and yeah, so I'm gonna go on a filming spree today, and hopefully I'll have some regular content out for you guys in the future. So yeah, I'll see you guys soon with a new one. All my social media is linked down below if you're curious. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I will see you guys very soon with a new one. Bye.